Long before laws were written on stone, before courts, constitutions, or codes, human beings were already judging one another. This judgment did not come from governments. It did not come from kings. It came from something older, a quiet sense that some actions were right and others were wrong. This is the origin of moral law, not as a list of rules, but as a force that shaped civilization itself. To understand moral law, we must travel back to a world with no police, no prisons, and no written contracts. A world where survival depended not only on strength, but on trust. Early human communities were small. Everyone knew everyone. If someone stole, everyone suffered. If someone lied, cooperation collapsed. If someone killed, the group weakened. From this reality emerged a simple truth. Groups that restrained violence survived longer than those that did not. Moral law was not invented, it was discovered. Long before philosophy, humans learned that unchecked desire destroyed communities. They learned that revenge spiraled endlessly. They learned that cooperation required limits. These limits were remembered not as laws, but as stories. Stories of ancestors punished for betrayal, stories of spirits watching human behavior, stories where injustice brought catastrophe. Moral law entered human memory as narrative before it became doctrine. As societies grew, memory was no longer enough. Oral tradition gave way to ritual. Ritual gave way to command. In Mesopotamia, laws were carved into stone, not to create morality, but to preserve it. The Code of Hammurabi did not ask whether justice existed. It assumed it did. An eye for an eye was not cruelty. It was restraint. It was an attempt to limit revenge, not encourage it. This reveals a critical truth. Early moral law was not about kindness. It was about containment. It sought to prevent chaos, not create virtue. In ancient Egypt, moral order was called ma'at. It was not merely law. It was cosmic balance. Truth, justice, harmony, and order were seen as interconnected. To violate moral law was not only to wrong another person, it was to destabilize the universe itself. This belief bound morality to reality. Ethics were not optional, they were structural. In ancient India, moral law became dharma, not a single rule, but a cosmic duty tied to one's role in the world. A ruler had moral obligations different from a farmer, a parent different from a child. Moral law was situational, but not relative. It was flexible in form, but absolute in purpose. In ancient China, moral law was not enforced by fear of punishment, but by fear of shame. Confucius taught that a society governed only by law would collapse. People would obey when watched and rebel when unseen. But a society governed by moral example would regulate itself. This insight was profound. Moral law was strongest when internalized. In the Hebrew tradition, moral law became covenant, not merely social contract, but sacred obligation. The commandments were not suggestions. They were boundaries placed on power, desire, and violence. Notice something important. The commandments addressed actions nearly every civilization feared: murder, theft, false testimony, adultery. These were not random sins. They were civilization killers. Moral law across cultures converged on the same prohibitions because human nature had not changed. What differed was the explanation. In Greece, moral law entered philosophy. Plato argued that justice existed beyond human opinion, that right and wrong were not created by societies but discovered by reason. Aristotle went further. He argued that moral law was embedded in human purpose. A knife is good if it cuts well. A human is good if they live in accordance with reason and virtue. This was not obedience, it was alignment. Rome transformed moral law into legal structure, but even Roman law assumed something deeper. That law without moral legitimacy would not endure. Empires learned this the hard way. When law became detached from justice, rebellion followed. When power replaced moral restraint, collapse was inevitable. As religion spread, moral law gained transcendence. Right and wrong were no longer just social necessities. They became eternal truths. This gave moral law extraordinary power, but also extraordinary danger. When morality was weaponized, violence could be justified as righteousness. The same moral instinct that restrained cruelty could be used to sanctify it. This tension remains unresolved. Modernity attempted to separate moral law from religion. Reason replaced revelation, rights replaced commandments. But something unexpected happened. Moral language did not disappear. It intensified. We still speak of justice. We still speak of dignity. We still speak of evil. Even when we deny objective morality, we argue as if it exists. This reveals something uncomfortable. Human beings cannot live without moral law. Even when we reject it intellectually, we smuggle it back emotionally. Why? Because moral law is not an invention. It is an adaptation. Societies that abandon moral limits collapse into fear. Fear demands control. Control destroys trust. And trust is the foundation of civilization. The origins of moral law are not found in heaven or in stone tablets alone. They are found in the fragile reality of human coexistence. Moral law arose because survival demanded it. It endured because meaning required it. And it persists because without it, power becomes absolute, and absolute power destroys everything it touches. The question facing modern civilization is not whether moral law exists. The question is whether we remember why it emerged in the first place. Because when moral law collapses, history shows us what follows. Not freedom, not progress, but fear, fragmentation, and the slow unraveling of trust. This is not a warning from religion. It is a lesson from history. And history is unforgiving to those who ignore it. If you want to understand civilization at its deepest level, you must understand moral law, not as command, but as memory. The memory of what happens when humans forget how to live together.